It's time. Thank you for tuning in to The Force Report. I'm T.D. Arnold. My special guest today is going to be the legendary Grammy Award Winning Patti Austin. Patti will be sharing her lifelong lessons in the music industry, her longtime friends she's carried along the years, as well as some things that you may not even know. Plus, we'll be sharing some of the music she's been doing throughout the years. So now, sit back and relax. It's time for The Force Report. Thank you for tuning in to The Force Report. I'm T.D. Arnold, and my special guest today on The Force Report is the legendary Grammy Award winning Patti Austin.
Damn. Yeah. I don't know what to say after all that.
Buckle your seatbelts, folks, because Patti takes the wheel. Coming soon to a theater near you.
That's like the most professional introduction I've had in 45 years. That was like old school intro.
That's what we do,
Damn.
girl. That's what we do. I mean, that's how I was trained.
Baritone. I'm like a legend in my own mind and shit. I'm digging this.
Remember, I grew up in radio at Howard University. You had the Melvin Lindsays, Donnie Simpsons.
Come on.
I mean, so those were the idols that I grew up on. I mean, like you had to. You couldn't just be like talking like this. You had to have that voice. Good evening. This is Tony. I mean, hey, how you doing? You really had to have some wake people up in the morning. I mean, if you did the quiet storm, this is TDR. You had to make it work. You had to make it work. You had to have your morning voice. And one time I was on a morning show and a night show. I had pillow talk in the evening.
Please, come on now.
Arnold with Pillow Talk.
Come on now. I'm an old woman. Don't do this to me. Gotta lighten up on old women. We'll die real quick if it's too good.
Woo.
You don't want to be responsible for the death of an old woman. Come on.
No.
As you've described me, an old legend.
No, she's a nice old legend. She's a legend. I'm calling you. I got respect for you, woman.
You got to get old to become a legend, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. It's like that tree. It's like a tree takes a long time to make a decision. Lord of the Rings. Takes a long time.
My mother had cancer. I was a teenager and I kind of went through it with her, but not completely because she was very much about pushing me away from whatever that was.
Okay.
But she beat it, you know.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
She was big on beating stuff that came together.
Yes. Wow.
Beat it back to hell.
So she had it at one point, and she beat cancer too as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she had a very experimental treatment. Actually, she was one of a very few number of women. She had cancer of the cervix that received what they called a radium insert. And it's funny, when the whole COVID thing kicked in, I related to people talking about not being able to touch their family members, that they had to talk to them through glass, because while my mother had this radium insert, we were not allowed to see her. And it was inside her for, I guess, a week. So my dad and I would stand outside the window and, and you can't scream at her too loud. We're in a hospital,
right?
So we would like send kisses and do hand signals and write notes. But yeah, it's a tough thing. And I think a lot of what happens with cancer with people Most of the people I know that have survived it just have incredible attitudes and get into a whole other kind of, in addition to, did you go through chemo at all?
No, I had prostate, so I had the seed implants, and
Right.
and that did it. I mean, and I matter of fact, it's been almost 10 plus years. See, I was on my way to Rwanda, and and I was in my early 40s. I was young, and so my grandfather, he didn't beat it. His son didn't beat it, and then
Wow.
I was on my way to Rwanda, and my doctor's office called me back. I just left the office like 2 days before. It says, Mr. Arnold, it said, well, my nurse accidentally ran a PSA on you, and we're seeing the numbers are quite weird. Can you come back in the office? So I came back in the office, and he said, normally we don't run a PSA because it was an accidental for your age, because I was real young. And so, he did another one that had me wait. And then the results came back, my levels were high. And so they sent me to a urologist, and they did x-rays on me and found out I had prostate cancer. And so that's when they suggested several things. And I said, well, wow. So they said it's a slow moving cancer, but you're going to have to take care of it. I said, okay. So I went to Rwanda, and I'd forgotten about it. And so he calls my office, like, come back 3 months later. He's like, dude, where you at? I was like, you said it was a slow move. Well, I mean, not that slow.
These are questions I go back to my mother again, used to ask when somebody would say something to her like that. She would always say, what is your concept of slow?
Yes.
Let's, be specific. No, really. And you kind of have to do that when you're talking to doctors, or just when you're talking in general.
Right.
What do you mean by slow? Because your slow might be my best.
My best.
And I'm going to start interviewing you now some more.
Oh,
what the hell were you doing in Rwanda? Tell me everything. I want that part of the story.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah. Now you put it out there. Come
on. We were doing it was post-genocide. It was we were filming. Post-genocide.
How post was it? How far from the
this was like almost probably like 5 to 10 years later. Between 5 and 10 years later.
So there's still a lot of
a lot of I mean, you got to see women. I was in villages up in the Burundi area where there were women that had been raped, and you had these children now and it was I remember seeing one guy who was sort of like he was like the mayor of his area, and he would have been what would have been considered a Tutsi that survived.
Right.
And he said it was like, he's describing like Nazi Germany. It was like the whole country was like possessed with a demon. He said because people woke up after the 3.5 months, and there was one guy, he said, he was in full of blood and with a machete, and he didn't realize how he got there. It was like they were just obsessed. It was like the mob mentality. And so, when we talk about the insurrection, which I call it insurrection, I don't know what anybody else calls it, but
what, you mean that thing on the 6th?
Yeah, that thing on the 6th, in my hometown of DC. And I was like,
I simplify it. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
And we find all of these gentle titles for Nazis. These people are Nazis.
Yes.
Anybody that wants to do what they want to do, hello out there. If you want to do what they want to do, Nazi, you're a freaking Nazi.
Yes.
They're not. And what you're describing to me in Rwanda, I saw when I was a little girl in Europe. I was 10 years old and I went to Europe to do a show. And my dad and I would walk every day to rehearsals. We were in Utrecht. And this is like how many years I'm talking about, 50, 1960.
Okay.
And there's still wreckage like you cannot believe. On our way to the rehearsal hall, there was one side of the street was completely pristine and the other side of the street was dust.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and these little old women would come out every morning and sweep their stoops, the ones that still had a stoop.
Right.
And the other side, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And everybody coming towards me had a nose missing, a leg missing, an eye missing, something missing.
Yeah.
And I said to my dad, what is why is it like this?
Right.
And he said, it's from a war. I said, what's a war? You got to think of the timing, like, early 60s, little kids.
You were young. Yeah, you were young.
Nowhere near as sophisticated,
Yeah.
Kids now know what that is. But I said, what's a war? He said, that's a really stupid thing that men do.
Yes, it is. And that's
And here we are again. Anthony.
I don't know.
Here we are again. How do you make it stop?
How do you make it stop? It's like putting the genie back in the, put him back. It's like we got this mad genie that somebody rubbed the magic lantern, and we got this guy that was here for 4 years.
Well, but he had a lot of training, I don't know if anybody saw the magnificent Dave Chappelle routine that he did when he was on SNL. And a lot of people got very upset about it. But, and I know Dave, and I've been meaning to communicate with him to tell him how much that monologue was one of the most brilliant monologues I've
heard. That was awesome. Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of really brilliant monologues from the baddest of from Lenny Bruce to Mom Mabley to Pigmeat Markham to Slappy White to Red Fox to I'm talking Richard Pryor, knew all of them, heard them all. This is like the top 10 for me. And I've used it as my litmus test for my white friends, because my white friends that got upset from it, I just know, okay, you go over here now, because I thought you were over here, but alas, you are not. So you go over here. And there were some Black folks that got upset because he used the N-word.
Right.
But in essence, what he was saying is, you got to walk in everybody's moccasins a little, because of what I do. And when I'm able to make a living, which hasn't been for a year now, I go on the road. I travel all around the world. I meet people from all over the world.
Right.
And I see, if I go to a place more than once, then I'm checking out their history. I want to know how everything got to be the way it is. And because of what we're going through now, I'm just on a deep research of how we got the way we are. And it's really, it's not very different from how Germany got the way it got. And it's not very different from the way that Rwanda got the way it got. Right. And it's based on the same principles of divide and conquer that have been used all throughout history. Right. All throughout history. Yeah. And the thing that terrifies me about it and makes me think that Keanu Reeves actually is ruling the world in the Matrix is because we keep doing all of this over and over and over and over and over and over again for the same reasons. And it's the only thing that changes is fashion, which is why the queens have saved us every 20 years. We're doing the same nonsense, but at least we're wearing some fabulous drag.
That's right. That's right.
And have some beautiful architecture and marvelous aesthetics to get us through. But we keep doing this same nonsense. Wow. And today is a scary day because we've had to bow to this fascism that permeates the air, not just in the United States, folks, all over the world.
Wow.
All over the world.
Wow.
This is happening all over the world. And I roll back to saying that Trump got a lot of really, really brilliant direction and instruction. Don't we call what white folks did to us 400 years ago kidnapping? Because that's what it was. We've been kidnapped. We are kidnapped victims. We are suffering from being kidnapped. And as my beautiful manager said one day, nothing's going to change until white folks admit what they have stolen.
Yes.
Words are important. How we describe these situations is important. We are kidnapped victims. We are dealing with people who, if they don't like shit, they blow it up and make it like they like it. If there's a mountain in my way, I blow it up. But it wasn't put there for you to blow up, you little son of a bitch. It was put there for you to figure out how to live with it or stay away from it, because it's what? Bigger than you.
Yeah. You heard it, folks.
Final question that I keep asking, and people get like crickets. Why are we hanging around in this shithole? Why aren't we collecting our money and getting the hell out of here and leaving this cesspool to these assholes? Now, I had somebody say to me, my people have worked too hard for this. For what? For what? If this was a personal relationship and you were with a man that treated you like this country treats Black folks, would you stay? Would your mommy and daddy be okay with you staying with him? He's beating your ass every night, treats you like shit, gives you some flowers the next day and says he won't do that anymore, and then he does it again. Would you want your child to be with that person, living with that person? That's what Black folks are doing with white folks. We're living with some very savage people.
Wow.
And we're not even thinking about leaving this place. That shows you what a good job they did on our freaking heads. And and I got news for you, if we decided to collect our asses and get on a boat and get the fuck out of here, they try to burn the goddamn boat down because they don't want to see you do that either. They don't want you to leave. They want you to stay here so they can torture you to death. Wow. Why are we staying here and asking ridiculous questions like, I love you, you never love me back? I don't stay with a motherfucker that don't love me like I love them.
Right.
I just don't. Why are we doing this as a people? I'm just asking. Now, I got on Clubhouse and I asked this question. We started laughing because everybody said kind of at the same time, well, we got no place to go. So what are we, an officer and a gentleman here? What the shit?
Well,
we need to be, I'm sorry. I think as a people, we need to be planning an exit strategy from this bitch. Because if it's going like it's going, it's going to be wholesale slaughter because that's the way these people function.
Oh,
and
Patti,
I'm sorry.
You're saying something that I totally agree with you. I mean, we've talked offline about, other countries, Africa. I mean, matter of fact, the president of Ghana has
I was just going to say, we've got an
open invitation.
We've got an invitation.
An open invitation. Yes. I mean, I have traveled to Ghana.
Build a new world.
Matter of fact, even in Nigeria now, they're trying to get more African Americans to come there. In as far as Rwanda has a great economy. It's doing well. They want other people, especially who are Black from America, Kenya. I mean, you have more of a platform. One of the things that I remember when I first went to Africa, that was the first time no one called me Black.
Okay.
I was not called a Black, I was just called a man.
You are a human being, exactly. Period.
I was just another guy.
One race, human race.
I was it. I mean, before, Anthony Arnold, he's he's a Black videographer, he's a Black singer, he's a Black this, he's a Black. But I never heard it from my other white he's the white, he's just Bob.
Right.
I mean, but I'm the Black guy. But when I went over there, he's like, oh, Mr. Here's Mr. Tony. I was just a Black guy. Yeah. It was the first time I was seeing myself. When I go to the islands and see, I was living in the islands. I have cousins in Trinidad, and when I'm just another Black guy. I'm just another guy. Just not even another Black guy. I'm just another guy.
Race is a construct again of white men.
Yeah.
There is one race. I'm sorry, there's two: the human race and the rat race.
Yeah.
Other than that, there ain't no other race.
There ain't no other race.
We are all the same. Tint came from moving around all over the world with different climates and different amounts of sun and pigmentation. Ain't got shit to do with anything. But now we have all been fit into these molds, and we've all been lorded over by a very, very selfish leader, you know, through history. And it's been very male dominated. And as my manager and I call it, very dick driven. We call it double D cup, double D bullshit, because it's the testosterone, you know, drives all of this nonsense that everybody is forced to live under. And I just, like I say, if I'm being abused, I don't want to stay in that environment. And I always question why Black folks take this and why they don't get together and get the hell out of here. I'm planning on getting out of here. I'm going to go to Panama.
I heard Panama's not. I heard.
A lot of the reason I'm going there is because my goddaughter, my manager's daughter, is my goddaughter. She's tremendously talented and insanely beautiful. And her grandmother was from Panama, and she spent the last 3 or 4 years that her grandmother was alive in Panama, taking care of her grandma.
Wow.
And she's an amazing young woman. And Nia, also her name is Nia. And so whenever I spoke to her when she was in Panama, and she'd be taking care of her grandma, every time I spoke to her, she sounded like she was smoking the best shit in the world, and she doesn't smoke shit. And I was like, what are you doing? You always sound all blissed out over there. What's going on in Panama? She said the same thing you're saying. I'm a person here. I'm a human being. I'm not a Black woman. She has 6 feet tall and magnificent. She said, I'm not a 6 foot tall, magnificent Black woman. I'm a woman here. And I want to be treated, before I die just once, I want to be treated that way. And so we've been talking about it, and I think that's going to be my move. But I also have a tremendous love for South Africa. It's just, when I left there the first, I've been there 4 times in my life. And when I left there the first time, I literally did get on my knees and I kissed the ground, because I felt like I was.
I did the same thing when I was. And
little children came up to, with their arms open, strange kids. This is another thing that blew me away in South Africa. The babies, they're everybody loves everybody. You know, I know they've got shit going on too. I'm not saying that, but the general vibe, you see a little kid in the street and they look up at you and they put their arms up and they hold you and they hug you and they just want to be one with the universe. And you feel it everywhere you go. And it's such a strange feeling when you grow up in this environment where you're constantly labeled with this label all the time. That's constantly defining you. And then suddenly you're allowed to be a person. And it does something to your soul. It blows your spirit up, and it's a great feeling. And I'm at a point now in my life, I have fought the great fight a lot through my life. And I'd probably be a lot further along in my life if I hadn't fought it the way I've fought it. But I like looking at myself in the mirror saying, hey, you fine thing, and feeling good about what I'm doing in my life and with my life. So I've always, I've never been afraid to speak my truth. And hopefully I've investigated my truth sufficiently to know that it is the truth whenever possible. And the older I get, the more I find that there are just things I don't want to have to deal with at this point in my life. There are other things I would really like to have the luxury to put my emphasis on and my focus on.
Georgia, you're not just voting for you. No, you're voting for me too. Georgia, I got you on my mind. You have got a chance today to keep the U in USA. Oh, Georgia, say, can you see? You could save my democracy. Oh, Georgia, you're not just voting for you. No, you're voting for me too. Georgia, you're not just voting for you. No, you're voting for me too. I know you gotta be tired of washing hands and wearing masks, but you could save the planet's ass. Oh, Georgia, we're all waiting to see if you've left the Confederacy. Well, welcome to the 21st century. No, you're voting for me too. You could sit around and mope and say, oh, what's the difference? Or you could just get out and vote. Just 2 senators in blue. Georgia, you know what to do. Georgia, you're not just voting for you. No, you're voting for me too. Even if we don't get along, live to fight another day. Just for now, let's sing along. Oh, Georgia, put love back in the world. Who better than a fine Southern girl? Well, Georgia, come on and give it a whirl, 'cause you're voting for me too. Yes, you're voting for me too. Make January 5th a belated Christmas gift. Georgia, you know what to do. Pick the party that's the best. Stop the grift and end this mess. Georgia, you know what to do. You can slow down the Grim Reaper. Use your vote, it'll be cheaper. Georgia, you know what to do. QAnon conspiracies, vote that crap away from me. Georgia, you know what to do. Georgia.
So that's one of the reasons that I got into writing what I'm writing now, writing the way I'm writing now, which is very political, and exploring. One of the things that kept me from writing for a very long time is I have a tendency to write in a very structured, classical way. And I got kind of embarrassed about it because I wanted to be more fluid and more hip and more the way music is now. And I became intimidated about it. But like I said, the whole thing that happened in Georgia made me say, you know, why can't I write a song like When I'm 64, like the Beatles? When they wrote that song, that song was like an old vaudevillian tune.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And nobody was making that kind of music.
Yeah, nobody.
When Stevie did half of what Stevie did, nobody else was doing in the world. It was just about, it went with what he was trying to say. So I got that, I had to get that yoke off of me because I carried that for a long time as a writer. And I just said, you know, screw it. I'm just going to write what.
What the hell you want to write
about? Lettucey told me this great story. Lettucey told me this great story one day. She was in her church choir, and there was a little old lady in the church choir, and everybody knew her and loved her. She was not very good. And she had, you know, old lady church vibrato.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord, I remember those days.
Okay,
oh, yeah,
so
I know that.
One of them sisters.
Yeah,
and they had a new conductor. And the conductor was not playing. She was serious. And they were singing. And this woman's voice kept sticking out and it was wrong. So she started going through each section. Okay, let me hear the altos. You know, let me hear the sopranos. And let me hear. And she finally got to this woman's section and she was sticking out and she was really bad. And so the conductor said, you know, gently to her, because she's elderly and she didn't, you know, she said, you're out of tune. And I don't know what to say to you to get you in tune, but it's really conflicting and it's loud and could you take it down? And she said, look, lady, I don't know what I'm doing. I just sings what comes out. And so I sings what comes out. That's where I'm at this point.
You sings, yeah. And that's what you got to do. I mean, and
I started writing like that, you know, with that mentality.
You got to write like that. You got to.
That's how I'm writing now, and it's freed me up. And I'm writing in all different kinds. And another thing that kind of freed me up a little bit was when I went to see Hamilton. I loved the fact that each song represented whatever the song was about. If it had a lyric that had kind of a Latin groove to it, he would go Latin with it. If it was pop, he'd go pop. And I just said, this is how I'm going to do this. I'm going to stop putting blinders on and forcing myself into a box that I'm doing this to myself. Nobody's asking me to do this.
Right.
And as soon as I did that, I started writing all over the place, all different kinds of. I'm going to send you the Georgia tune, and I'm going to send the other tune that I did that we couldn't get a video for because it's made me change my whole thinking about this project, because I'm really trying to put it together like a theater piece, ultimately, that we will do both ways. We'll do it as a video, and we'll do it as a live piece if we're able to ever get back to that level. But it's really, and I think it's a combination, because I've written some spoken word stuff, and just also just talking about what I've gone through during this time and what I've learned from it, and what I keep waiting to get what I call COVID crazy from being in quarantine for so long, and it's just not happening. But I know that a lot of it has to do with my personality, because I really, really love my solitude. I really do.
You and me both. I love it.
And it's not.
I can live in this world now.
It's not that I dislike people. I love people. Probably love them too much. And when I'm with people, I'm with people. Right. But when I'm done, I must be alone, and I must regroup, and I must recharge. And I can't do that around people. I do a concert for 30,000 people, and they're screaming and they love me, and it's wonderful. I got to be able to get at peace with myself when I'm away from that, because that doesn't happen all the time, nor should it, nor can it. So I have to create balance from that, because that's not reality. Right. The only way that I can obtain that balance is to get away from folks and chill and reacquaint myself with I must admit, my favorite person, me.
Oh, look, like you're born one day before.
I was going to say, is that
your birthday's on the 10th? I'm on the 11th. We're both Leos.
Oh, and you're on Madonna. Madonna's birthday.
She's on the 11th now. And one thing that I learned about with Leos that were born in our time frame, you were on that next segment. Yeah. It says that we don't mind being in front of a crowd, but we don't like being in a crowd all the time. Yeah, I mean, and I was like, I've never
heard that before, but that's true.
That's true. That's how I was like, you're a Leo, and you were born in this time. You like being in front, as long as they're out there. But once you step down from the stage and they start, oh God, get away from me. Oh no, too many people, And so we're like lions. What do lions do? They eat, they sleep. And they, they sleep under the. I remember when I was in Kenya, we saw lions. Oh, the lions over there by themselves.
They be chilling.
As long as I'm full, I don't have to be running. That's what, as long as you eat, I don't have to eat for a week. I'm chilling. I'm chilling. I mean, so Patty's like this. I'm just gonna be chilling. I'm eating and I'm chilling.
And I'm chilling. That's it. And I love to cook too. So that's medicine. Hey. I've been in heaven over here just cooking stuff. As a matter of fact, I was like, I got to find a way to get my leftovers to somebody that needs some food, because I eat like a bird. You like me. You're a vegetarian like me. I mean, it's like not too many places where I can eat down. See, I'm in South Carolina in Anderson. Right. Oh no, that's rough.
It's rough.
I didn't go vegan. I went vegetarian.
I mean, I'm vegetarian. I'm vegetarian.
Yeah, me too, because I travel too much, and there's just places you cannot get anything that doesn't have parents or eyes. Yeah. So you can always get an egg somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if I'm traveling someplace where I know it's going to be, I started a long time ago, I started bringing my food with me. I have foods that I carry with me on the road that I know will sustain. I carry a cooler. So, I got like hard-boiled eggs and cheese and those kind. Dairy saves me, because it's very difficult to travel and be a vegan. It's
it is hard.
Not where I travel. I'm in Japan. I'm in Africa, Eastern Europe. It's that ain't gonna happen. So I had to find the healthiest way to do that. When I started, I just realized yesterday that I've been doing this for 3 years now. I didn't even realize I'd been doing it that long. But when I um, I really started it so that I could sustain myself better on the road. I found that when I eliminated those things from my diet, I slept better, I got to bed earlier, I woke up, felt lighter, felt better, and it just really worked for me with my traveling schedule. And also I was getting older, and I realized that there were certain foods that I wasn't digesting as well as I used to before. And so maybe maybe this is God's way of telling me not to, not to eat that shit right now. So that's what I did. And it really, 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 really helped me a lot. But I recommend it highly to anybody that's out there that's getting a little bit older and wants to lighten up on their diet. And it's just kind of a more colorful way to eat. You know, I look at my plate and I've got all these beautiful colors and vegetables and flavors, and I find it's more interesting than eating meat all the time.
Yeah. Well, actually, I found I taste the food anymore. When I took out food. I mean, the meat out of stews and all.
Right.
Taste. I mean, it's like I can literally taste what flavor vegetables really taste like.
Exactly.
Because something with meat takes away certain things in whether it's chicken, beef, or whatever it is. Yep. And so it's like, yeah, I can taste this. This has a really good taste to it.
A beautiful veggie going on.
So yeah, I'm with you there.
I do a lot of topical and political stuff between the music that I do. And in Europe, the show that I do is generally with symphony orchestras, and it's a tribute to Ella Fitzgerald. And it's really kind of like a one-woman show. It's more like a theater piece, and it has dialogue between the songs. And the music is very Great American Songbook, because Ella was maybe like the greatest representative of the Great American Songbook in history. So you've got all these wonderful Cole Porter lyrics and Gershwin lyrics, and all of them are as timeless as anything could possibly be. They all totally relate to everything that's going on now, because they were either
a great album. You've done an album on that, right? You have an album based on that, right?
Well, on Gershwin,
On Gershwin.
I did two projects. Kind of around the whole world of Ella. The first one was a tribute to Ella that I got a Grammy nomination for, and that was called That's Called for Ella. And then after that, I did the Gershwin, the Avant Gershwin album. But it all kind of came from a relationship with Ella. And through that time, I created a show that became very popular. That's been very popular in Europe and in Asia. And as I said, it's with symphony orchestras. So between the songs, I'm talking about, I talk to the audience about things that are going on where they live. And I'm able to do that because I always get wherever I'm going the night before. I turn on the TV, I look at the advertising, I read the local papers as much as I can, or the local expat paper, and go online and get the rhythm. And then I always ask whoever's taking me around, the person that was like you were over at Howard taking people around. And I pick their brain on the way to the venue, to the sound check. Well, what's going on here? Da, 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 da. I get a little bit of that. And that goes in between the songs.
Right.
So that the audience knows that I know that they know. And it creates a different kind of a relationship. So that's the way I'm used to working. And that teaches you so much about people around the world.
Somewhere there's heaven. How high the moon, there is no moon up above when love is far away too, till it comes true that you love me like I'm loving you. Somewhere there is heaven, it's where you are. Somewhere there's music, as night would shine if you would come to me soon. Until you will have still my heart and how high the moon. Somewhere, yeah, there's music. It's where you are. Somewhere there's heaven. How near, how far, there is no moon up above when love is far away too. Until it comes true, oh, that you dig me like I'm digging on you. Somewhere there is heaven, it's where you are. Somewhere there's music. How near, how far, the darkest night would shine if you would come to me soon. Until you will have still my heart and how high the moon is the name of the song. How high the moon, though the words may be wrong, we're swinging it because you asked for it, so we're singing it just for you. How high the moon, does it touch the stars? How high the moon does reach up to Mars? Those words may be wrong to the song. We're asking how high, high is the moon. Sweet ba-doo-dee, boodle-doo-doo-doo-dee-wee. Sweet ba-doo-dee, boodle-doo-doo-doo-dee-wee. Sweet ba-doo-doo-ba-ba-ba-dee, boodle-doo-doo-dee. Bo-bee-ba-doo-dee-bo-wee, do-ya-ba-ba-wee. Bo-ba-doo-doo-bee-ba-ba-dee, da-doo-la-doo-dee-dee-dee-dee. Bo-bee-bee-ba-ba-ba-doo-dee-da-dee-ya. Bo-ba-doo-doo-doo-doo, ba-ba-doo-doo-doo-bow. Hip-a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Those words may be wrong to this song, we're asking how high, high, high is the moon. How high
Share with us, the audience, what was that like? How did you connect with Ella? And what was your relationship like?
God, you know, I don't have any short story.
I know, I mean,
I'm laughing at myself. I don't have one freaking short story in my entire life. I've been doing this since I'm 4 years old professionally.
right.
And Dinah Washington discovered me at the Apollo Theater because I went with my parents backstage to meet her at the Apollo. Back in the days when they used to do 6 shows a day, we went between one of her shows, and my dad had worked with Ella when he was playing trombone. And he hadn't seen her for years, but they were dear friends. And he wasn't married when he worked for her. And so he wanted to introduce Dinah to his family. And so we went backstage. Very long story short, she dared me to go out and sing on stage. I did. When I finished singing on stage, I ran into the arms of a guy that was kneeling with his open arms, and he picked me up and spun me around and took me out to my parents, who were standing in the hall in complete shock because I had done this little performance. And he begged them to let me appear on his show the next week. And they asked me what I wanted to do, and I, of course, wanted to do that. And the guy was Sammy Davis Jr., And so I kind of went from Dinah to Sammy. And then Dinah overheard that conversation and said, "What are you doing with my goddaughter?" She was not my godmother a few minutes before. But she
in the black neighborhood, that we get
me.
these adopted grandmothers
Exactly.
and everybody, godmothers and everything. I know.
Yeah. So Sammy got kicked to the curb. But I did do his show the next week, but Dinah did make me her goddaughter. And then the next person she took me to meet was a guy that was playing trumpet and writing arrangements for her that had just moved to New York with a very young wife and a very new baby in a high chair. And we went to his basement apartment to set some keys for some songs that Dinah and I were going to sing together. And we did that, and she said, "This is my goddaughter," and he said, "No, she's my goddaughter too," and that was Quincy.
The cue.
Kind of like, this amazing trilogy of people got me started in the business. So while all of that's happening, I'm growing up in a little fishing farming community called Bayshore in Bayshore, Long Island. And my dad isn't playing trombone professionally anymore. He's practicing every day, but he doesn't play anymore because now he works at the post office.
Okay.
And living all the way out in Long Island because my mother, when she was working as a waitress, saved up her tip money and bought herself a little summer cottage in this crazy place called Bayshore. She had a friend that because she was living in Harlem at the time, that had a house there. And he said, "Why don't you come and visit in the summer?" And she did, and she loved it. And so she ended up buying this little house, and she met my dad on a Monday, and they got married the next Sunday. And they were living in Harlem for about a year before they had me. And then, and they were very poor, and they decided they'd rather be poor in a little summer cottage in Bayshore than in an apartment in Manhattan. So they got on the back of a watermelon truck and went to the house in Bayshore. And every weekend, because my mother grew up in Harlem, she had to see her peeps. And as soon as my parents were able to afford a car, we would go in every Sunday to Harlem. We would go to Abyssinian Baptist Church in the morning and hear Adam Clayton Powell, Senior. This is before Junior. Junior came, saw him too.
Yeah.
But and you'd hear everybody from Mahalia Jackson to Clara Ward singers to, it was just, that was in the morning. And then we would go to Central Park and have a picnic, because my mother would always pack a lunch because my parents couldn't afford to go to a restaurant. So I always thought we owned this rock in Harlem in Central Park. And then we would go from there to the Apollo and see whoever was doing a show there. So that's how I came to meet Dinah in the first place. Wow. So we were going back and forth between Bayshore, this fishing farming town, and, right in the middle of all of this amazing, brilliant African-American spirit that was exploding in Harlem at that time. And it was a wild dichotomy.
I bet. Oh.
And it represented my entire life, which has always been a wild dichotomy. And while that's going on, I've got a dad who's practicing his instrument every day. And my parents worked split shifts so that one of them could always be with me and they would not have to hire a babysitter. And so I would spend my days, because my dad worked nights, I spent my days with my dad practicing his horn and showing me everything about music. And when he wasn't playing himself, he was playing all kinds of music, and he listened to everything. I'm talking from military drum and bugle corps competition records to Tito Puente, wow, to Big Mama Thornton, to just everything, Miles, everything, whatever anybody was doing, he listened to it. And it became the basis and foundation of his relationship to Quincy. Quincy and my dad were very close. My dad was like Quincy's older brother. Oh. And a lot of that relationship was based around their love of all kinds of music. And when Quincy started working for Mercury Records, he would send stuff over that they were getting ready to put out. We would get all these cool records before they would come out on the market. I remember him sending the soundtrack from West Side Story and Bob Dylan's first album.
Wow.
And hearing those things, you know, so this was the kind of music I was growing up on as a kid. And a lot of that music, my long-winded answer, was Ella. So Ella became, all of it became an influence. But Ella particularly for me when I was a kid, because there was just something about the sound of her voice that fascinated me. Just her vibrato, just the tone of her vibrato, the rhythm of it, the quiver of it, the place that it's set in my ear was always this most wonderful place. So I always wanted to not sound like her, but be able to do whatever that was with what equipment I had.
Right.
And so I think it was always kind of like a little seed that was planted in the back of my mind. And I did not get around to doing her repertoire until many, many, many years later. And one of the driving forces for that was Rosemary Clooney, who had through the years become a mentor to me. And we were standing in the hallway where all the dressing rooms are at at Avery Fisher Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there for a celebration of Lena Horne's 80th birthday. And I was going on. I was the last thing on the show before they brought Lena out to congratulate her and for her to, of course, sing something that would rock the world for the for the next 80 years. She was ridiculous. But anyway, so I'm standing backstage with Rosemary because Rosemary had before everybody in the world was on this show, this tribute to Lena. And Rosemary was on the show. And I hadn't seen Rosemary for a very long time. So we're commiserating in the hall. And I think I was coming off of How Do You Keep the Music Playing? I was going through a nice little moment there, you know, with the hit records and all of that stuff, very much in the pop field. And Rosemary said to me, "That's great and that's wonderful now, but that you can't take to the grave. You have to sing the Great American Songbook. And you are now the heir apparent." I said, "Well, no, you got Natalie, you got that," and I'm naming names. She said, she took her fingers and poked my chest and said, "You are the heir apparent. You need to know this repertoire. This will take you through the rest of your life. I know of what I speak." And I said, "Okay, Rosemary."
Yeah.
And with that, I fought to do the Real Me album, which was a fight because nobody wanted me to sing that kind of music. And
Talking about the record company?
No, the record company was not feeling it. And I went in and demoed about 20 songs that were kind of in that genre. The idea was to take that music and do it my way. And so I went in with, oh, this is terrible. I've just drawn a blank. It'll come back to me in a second. But I just did piano vocals, and I had a meeting with Lenny, and I played him the piano vocals, and I said, this is what I want to do on my next album. And he was sitting at his desk, and after he heard the first 2 or 3 songs, he literally physically slid under his desk. And I was kind of looking down when I went to talk to him. Because he stopped listening after the 3rd song, and I figured it was because he didn't like it. And I was looking down when I looked up to say, "Lenny, you know, this is what I want to do." He just kind of like waved his hand. He said, "Go make the record."
Wow.
Go make the freaking record. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, I get it. I didn't know you did that stuff. I said, "That's the stuff I started out doing. The stuff I'm doing now has nothing to do with what I do."
Right. Right.
So, and that's really kind of what Rosemary was saying to me. This stuff, I know this has longevity because it's kept me alive this long, you know. And she was part of the genre of the artists that catapulted that genre to a very, very, very high level, you know. And you know, she made a lot of music from that era classic, and it served her well. And she knew that it had legs, and she knew that I was getting older and I wasn't going to be able to carry the mantle of whatever I had done in my youth. I was going to have to use another chop. And she knew I had it because I used to do a fundraiser with Rosemary every year. She used to do a fundraiser the night before the Academy Awards on the stage of the Oscars with the Oscar Orchestra.
Right.
And everybody in Hollywood performed on this show. And it was a fundraising for a hospital that she was aligned with. And every year she would ask everybody to do different tunes. And she would pick a tune for me every year. And it was always a tribute. The show, the theme of the show was Singers for Songwriters. And so they would honor 5 composers, 3 alive and 1 posthumous. And so the composers would be sitting in the front row, and you'd be singing anything from anything. And when Julie Stein, God rest his heart, was still with us, they honored him one year, and Rosemary had me sing, I think I sang Don't Rain on My Parade or something like that. And he was sitting there and he loved it. And he came back after the show. And I think I did every tribute for Julie Stein for the rest of his life, which was like maybe 4 or 5 more years. I kind of became his go-to girl because she always had these magnificent composers that were still alive sitting in the audience. A lot of them did not know who I was. They knew, you know, Bob Hope opened the show. Right. Ella was on the show every year. These were the people they knew more because it was like from their genre. So they weren't that familiar with me. I remember one year Rosemary said, I got to get somebody in here that's under 100 years old. Can you help me with this? You're the youngest person on the show. I said, yeah, but you've got like the biggest star. She said, She said, put something together. We're honoring Michel Legrand this year. Just tell me who you think. Bring me your people. I said, well, Michel Legrand. I mean, I just want to hear Michael McDonald sing The Windmills of Your Mind before I die. She said, great, go get him. So I got on the phone and called Michael, and he was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it.
Hey.
And of course, he killed it.
Oh, wow.
Like a circle in a circle. Come on. Like a wheel within a wheel. I mean, it was ridiculous. And wow. Michel died. He was just quelling, you know. The show is over, and Michel comes backstage. Michael has no idea who he is, and Michel goes over to him and says, oh, that was wonderful. Oh my God, the way you sing my song. And Michael didn't know who he was. He's like, yeah, okay, fine. And he couldn't understand through Michel's accent.
Wow.
And about 10 minutes later, he came over to me. He said, this really weird French guy just came over to me, and he was raving about something. I said, that's Michel Legrand. He was singing his song. He said, oh my God, where is he? And he went running around looking for Michel. But I mean, so that was how I kind of got into that whole world of doing that kind of music with those kinds of composers. And as I said, I got to meet Ella. We got a little standing joke because after the second year, every time we would do it, we would get introduced inevitably. You know, whoever was working backstage would come over and say, oh, Patti, have you ever met Ella? Oh, no, this is the first time. No, I would love to meet Ella. Are you kidding? And so we were introduced.
On the next Force Report, Patti Austin talks about her friendship with Michael Jackson, Luther Vandross, and her godfather, Quincy Jones. All this and more on the next Force Report.